Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Think Virtual Live with Jamie and I. We're looking forward to giving you virtual tools on how to grow your business. Right now and today, we're going to talk about 10 things that every company needs to really be thinking about in order to scale over the next 3 years. This past March, everything changed, and it changed forever as far as how we look at business, attack our business, grow our business, plan for our business. And every company that I know of, once COVID hit, really started looking at their 3-year plan to determine how am I going to adapt and pivot and relook at the next 3 years. So today we want to give you a bunch of things to look at. And, many of them you can do with your current team. Many of them you can do with maybe hiring new people. And many of them you can do with hiring virtual people, and which are great. So Jamie, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be here.
So let's kick it off. Anything to add, Jamie?
No, one thing I wanted to say is what we're going to talk about today are things that are going to take some time and some energy from your company. But it's not the time to rest on your laurels and to get comfortable. It is a time to plow forward so that you guys can grow and make the most of right now. And so that in 3 years or 5 years or whenever, you can see a huge shift in your company. So it does take time, but don't let that scare you. There's lots of things that need to be done. That will be a huge game changer.
Yeah, well, it's not only taking time. I just want to comment on that, but it's rewinding things to the simple.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's ways to make things complicated, and then there's rewinding and reverse engineering the systems, the processes, the flow, the assembly lines of everything you do down to the simple. And getting down to simple takes a lot of time. Mm-hmm. It's I think it was Winston Churchill who said, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter speech, right? It takes time to break things down to the simple. So let's get started. One of the key things, Jamie, that I see in many companies are that companies are not, they don't have it clearly defined, the specific and measurable roles and responsibilities of what everybody needs to do. And they have these kind of like big 1, 2, 3 page descriptions, but it's all very generic and it doesn't really specify. So first thing that I would recommend is everybody needs to look at every single person on the roster, every single person who's maybe a virtual person, and what are the specific and measurable roles and responsibilities that person needs to do on a daily basis, their leading activities that they need to be doing.
Absolutely. I also think that when we look at our job descriptions, like I know that there's so many jobs that, you get in there and they're completely different from their job description. So make sure that your job description really kind of speaks to what this person is going to do, and defining that so that they don't get into a role that they think they've taken and then it's completely different than what they have expected. Correct. So and then maybe it doesn't fit their skills anymore. So being able to define all of that, not only they can kind of make a better job description, but then they can also define it and measure it and make sure that, anything that doesn't have a job description for people that kind of just came in and evolved into different positions throughout the time, but you didn't have to necessarily recruit from the outside, those positions still need a job description also.
Yeah. And one thing, I think also when you have an org chart, one of the things I recommend is you have an org chart for today, a year out, 2 years out, and 3 years out, and then understanding the characteristics of each person that you want for the specific roles, because you want to get the right people in the right seats. And if you are really specific and measurable in exactly what they need to do, how they need to execute on a daily basis, it's a lot easier to get people in the right seat. So sometimes you have the right person in the wrong seat, right. You realize what they should be doing, and you move them, and then they can really excel. All right, so moving on off of the kind of the org charts and looking at all of your people, I think it's really, really important to understand and know the succession plan for every person in the company. Typically, what I see a lot of times when I'm in companies is that you're like, oh yeah, I have the succession plan for the CEO, but you need to understand every single person. Mm-hmm. And one of the things when I'm talking to companies is, millennials typically stay 3 to 4 years, right, on average. And we're going to see this next decade of a lot of turnover, and that's to no fault of the company, but people want to grow and learn and have different experiences in companies. Well, I'm okay with hiring somebody who says, I'm going to be here 3 years, because then I know the succession plan. They need to hire their replacement a year prior or 6 months prior. They need to train that person. They need to document and digitize everything they're doing through the course of their 3 years there. So then when the next person comes, it's an easy transition.
Yeah, and I would just add that that a succession plan, it can be an internal succession plan where people are growing within the company. And this allows for a culture of growth and development rather than managers kind of holding their position so tight that they don't want the people underneath them to grow. So being able to know and genuinely want your direct reports to be able to grow past you so that, or into your position even, then, and that should always be the mindset. I'm growing them up for the next thing for them. And then, you know, and if you don't have that, some people kind of hold on tight to their positions and then don't make it a great culture for the people that are coming in.
Yeah, well said. Well said. What's next, Jamie?
So creating an assembly line of everything so that everybody knows how to hand off their roles and when to hand them off. So not having like these arbitrary, kind of vague lines of who does what.
Yeah.
Assembly line.
Yeah, and I think what's really important there is, you know, if you look at, you know, step by steps, everything in an organization needs to be younger down, and you need to spoon feed not only internally how to communicate, but how your clients need to communicate with you. And if they can understand exactly step by step, you know, McDonald's has a system and a process for everything. So they take the thinking and the decision making out of things throughout the day so people can excel at their job. And we need to do that as a company. And so again, going back to taking time, Jamie, what you talked about earlier, it takes time to actually create these. But when you reverse engineer and younger everything down and create a step-by-step, simple system for people to follow, as basic as it is, here's, you know, if you have an issue, call this phone number. I will call you back within 3 business hours, you know, and you let people know how to work with you and what the expectations are, then they're going to really, you know, chime into that.
It also stops things from falling through the cracks. So you and I don't know who is responsible for what. And so we kind of just don't take ownership rather than knowing exactly who's responsible for each communication to the client or, you know, projects that you're on. Everybody should know exactly where they sit in the scheme of the work.
Correct. Correct. I mean, you know, if you go back, it's 2020 right now. You go back to 1913 when Henry Ford installed and really mastered the assembly line. His innovation reduced the time it took to build a car from more than 12 hours to 1 hour and 33 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so if we want to maximize and scale our business, if we want to scale and maximize our people to get to their potential, if we want our clients to not be frustrated, we need to be conscious of the time and making things easy for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. So what's next, Jamie?
So the next thing is to define the standards of each specific and measurable goal.
Yeah.
So, you know, everything, you know, not everything in a company should be measurable, but, you know, it's really important that you have not only goals that people can measure themselves by, but then you can then go ahead and evaluate how people are doing and hold them accountable based on things that are measurable. So it's really important not to just kind of willy-nilly throw out an undefined project or an undefined goal for somebody so that they are not really sure of what how they're supposed to set their achievement level. Does that? Yeah.
Well, you can do it if you want them to interpret it their way.
Correct.
And
that's
so,
that's
you know, like we all have to. If I were to create a blueprint for a house and give it to 3 different builders, versus tell 3 different builders what I want, if you know the blueprint will give me the result of exactly what I want versus their interpretation. And so where companies I see go wrong a lot is the interpretation is to what everybody interprets because they don't have all the standards laid out. No, so well defined. And
and also it helps. Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, I think we have a little lag. I was just going to say that helps to give the owners their vision in there. So if you're defining things pretty specifically, as an owner, you're not like, I love the house analogy. Like your house you may want your house to look way different than I want my house to look.
Right.
And so, as an owner, you want your vision to be passed down. And so that can only be done if things are measurable, specific, and defined.
Yeah. Crystal clear. So, this gets into our next one, which is documenting, right? Document, writing, and digitize to create your digital library for growth and digitize everything. We still need, I think companies still need the written manual, that nobody will read, the employee manual that people sign and nobody's reading it. It's kind of like when Verizon hands you something to read and sign, you're not reading it, even though, because you want your phone. And so it's really, really important right now to take the archaic documents, update them, but also digitize them, create training. I know we've talked about Trainual on this show, and you're a big proponent of that, and digitize everything and grow your digital library. Again, takes time, got to do all the things we're talking about thus far. But if you want to get ready for this decade, which is going to accelerate faster than anybody can comprehend, this, in my opinion, is a must.
Yeah, and there are many, I would just say that make sure that it's cloud-based so that everybody can reach it from wherever, if you're working from remote or inside of an office. And then also you need to define who owns each part of that document to continually update it. So we know how quickly things become irrelevant in a company. And so making sure that you're actually, somebody owns the changes that are happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So Jamie's frozen.
Time and updates. So training is the next.
Yeah. Oh. You froze for a minute. So I'm not sure if you're still frozen, but
yeah. But I'm still frozen.
No, you're not frozen. But I don't know if you talk about keep refining what's working and what doesn't. Document. Yeah. So if you talked about it, you were frozen, but keep refining is key. Okay, so then you were talking about training. You're good.
Yeah, training was next. What I did say is that somebody has to own the part of making the changes to the document. You have to actually give that job to somebody.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's talk about training.
Okay. Training. It's, I think, the most important part to a business, because if you don't train people correctly or have a training program in place, course, whatever you want to call it, or just, what's going to happen the first week on the job, the first 30 days, the first 90 days, as you transition into a new job, if you don't have that in place and really defined, you're going to spend a lot more time, picking up the pieces of what somebody thinks this job is about.
Yeah. Well, I think also, Jamie, when it comes to training, I think training is so key on so many different levels. Training is an ongoing element, especially right now, because you have a group of Gen Z and millennials who are craving and hungry for fast growth and mentorship and training is so key. And if you want to, train on all the nuances, right? Understanding what's going on in real time, understand the objections of today's objections, today's stresses, today's fears of clients, providing talking points, questions, roadmaps, what's the next step, is so important for salespeople, for managers, for leadership. How do you lead during times like this? It's all about the nuances, the words, the way you're effectively communicating. It is so critical, I think, training on every different level. To me, training is whatever a company is spending in training, they should double or triple it and invest in their people.
I agree. I actually did a Tech Tip Tuesday, which is something I do kind of a video for my social media. And yesterday I highlighted a company called HubSpot, and they have free training for anybody who wants to take it on almost anything sales, marketing, and service, and including also web development, SEO optimization. You can go on to there. And so that company is, that's for, anybody. Yeah. And what a great way to put yourself forward in in the world. So that's what we should be doing. Kind of giving it to everybody, giving more information to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. The more content you can give away, the more training you can do, the better off. You know, some people will say, well, I don't want to train and invest in my people if I know they're going to leave in 2 to 3 years. Well, if you have the right people and they're learning and they're growing and they're making you money and inspiring other people and hiring their replacement and training them, you should celebrate them leaving, because maybe some of your best clients will come from wherever they go. So, yeah, which leads us into kind of mentorship and accountability. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
Day one, people need a mentor. Yeah. I am a huge proponent of having a mentor, almost like a big brother, big sister situation in a company. And I think your top people should be mentoring the people that are coming in, and there should always be a vision of what you want somebody to grow into. And so this should be a program. It should be not only a program within a company, but it should be a honor for the person who's mentoring to be able to become a mentor within your company. So huge. So that's mentors inside a company. I also believe, and I know you're a strong believer in, everybody should have at least 3 mentors, whether it's, any part of your life, correct? So whether it's a podcast you constantly listen to and it's somebody that you don't necessarily talk to every day, but you're learning from them, or it's, John, you mentor me in business all the time. You're an amazing coach. Like, you're somebody who
Stop it.
But it's true. I mean, I learned so much from you. You have to have mentors in your life, but in your company, if you can bring that into your company, it's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And I just want to say something also based on what you said. You have a senior person who's teamed up with a younger person, but it's very common in companies to have different generations mentoring each other, right? Mm-hmm. The 20-year-old is mentoring the 60-year-old as much as the 60-year-old is mentoring the 20-year-old, and staying connected to technology. And, I interviewed this guy yesterday. His name was Mark. I may be saying his last name wrong. Kesa. He was incredible. And the way he talked about his dad, he's a musician. They own grocery stores. The interview was amazing. And he just talked about his dad in such a great way. And one of the things he talked about his dad is he never stopped learning. At 65 years old, his dad was learning how to use a computer and Microsoft and all the technologies. And anytime he wanted to do something new, he just went and did it. He wanted to learn how to fly, so he went and just those types of things. And then surrounding himself with mentors is, to me, mentorship is the fastest way to grow.
And you always tell a story about how your dad, your whole business career started when you got those tapes.
Yeah.
What was that? Whose tapes?
My dad gave me
Were they Tony Robbins?
No. They were Brian Tracy, Psychology of Success. My dad gave me a set at 18 and said, Jonathan, I think you'll learn more from these than you will college. And I became addicted and knew that's what I wanted to ultimately do. And now, here we are.
Here we are.
So mentorship, accountability, key. I think it's so important to hold people accountable. They need it. They want the structure. Just kind of a quick highlight on that. And then, we've been talking about, getting the right people, succession planning, assembly line of systems and standards and documents and refining and training and mentorship, accountability. But we always need good people, and we always need to be recruiting. It takes a long time to find the right people. And we must always, be using our resources of people we know and Indeeds of the world and LinkedIn's and Monsters of the world to always be looking for the best.
100%. That is so important, to never feel like, oh, I'm done. I've got all the people in the seats, because ultimately something's going to happen. Somebody's going to leave, and you're going to be stuck in, and you don't want to be stuck in this situation of hiring out of desperation, right? Yeah. You want to hire from a really good place.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people right now are like, oh my God, this is so much information. This sounds like 10 years of work here.
Yeah.
But the truth is, you can tackle one thing at a time. You can get people to help you. You have people in-house that can help you. And, there are ways in which you can figure out what to do first. I think, John, you're really good at kind of figuring out where the gaps are and finding out, okay, this is what a business needs to do first, and to be able to, and then you can kind of plan it out. It does not have to be all at once, so don't be overwhelmed.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And I think a lot of times people, Jamie, are thinking, I'm overwhelmed. I don't have the people power to do this.
Sure.
Right? Which is why I love doing this with you, because what you're doing is you're going into companies and you're saying, hey, let me talk to you. Let me interview people. Let me then create the systems, the processes, the assembly lines, the streamline. And here it is on paper. Here it is digitized. Now let me turn it into a training online course. I mean, those are critical things that companies have been, doing so well the last decade. They haven't thought about doing that as effectively as they need to.
Sure.
And you need your resources to do this, right? You must, you can do it with the people you want, or you can bring on additional resources to do it. But the question companies need to ask themselves is, what is it costing them not to do it the right way?
Right.
And so you got to do it the right way. I mean, you can quantify that. We're not going to right now, but you can quantify doing it the right way and doing it the wrong way. You can quantify the amount of time that you are doing it the wrong way. The amount of time you're doing it with the people that don't necessarily know exactly how to do it. Goes back to finding the right people in the right seats from what we just started talking about.
Absolutely.
And that leads us into our last piece, which of the 10 things we've talked about. You got to have strong leadership. You got to have strong leadership skills. You got to be able to be an effective communicator. You got to be able to show gratitude, humility, forgiveness, and lead your people more than ever before. Heartfelt leadership is absolutely key. One of the things that I left it from this my talk yesterday is the Mark's dad. He said, "Don't let success get to your head, and don't let failure get to your heart." Right? Nobody's going to be perfect in everything that they do. Leadership isn't easy, but regardless of how you're doing, don't let it get to your head. Try stuff. If it doesn't work, don't let it get to your heart, and go back to the drawing board.
Interesting. I like that. I like that saying. And just remember to lead with humanity, right? Like everybody
Right.
that's working for you is a human being with their own daily stuff, that's filling in their mind and their issues and whatever. And so leading with a bit of compassion and humanity is really important, not to kind of lay down the hammer all the time, but definitely hold people accountable.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is critical. I mean, you can still have accountability with humanity, compassion, and humility.
Absolutely.
And kind of a mix of everything. All right, so Jamie, we talked about a lot today.
A lot.
Yeah, we talked about a lot. We talked about defining specific and measurables with complete clarity, roles, responsibilities of each person, understanding the succession of each person, which is really important. Create the assembly line and continuum of everything, defining the standards, document everything, keep on refining, keep on training, defining who owns each part. Mentorship and accountability are key. Always be recruiting. Leadership is key. Investing in your people, and lead with humanity, humility, and compassion, but also accountability. And in Mr. Cassa's words from yesterday, don't let success get to your head, and don't let failure get to your heart. How would you suggest that everybody kind of take, and I know you said it a little bit earlier, but what's the first step? Or if they're on the first step, what's the second step? And how do you keep moving with consistency through these things to scale your business these next few years?
I personally think the first step is to start with the people that you have in-house and start to define those roles so that when you now recruit somebody new, you have a definition, you have an understanding of what the role is, you've documented that. So it could even be just starting with one person, the person at the front desk when they, it could be the person who is your HR person. It could be your accounting person. It could be your salesperson. It could be just one role. Start there. It'll organically grow from there. And I think that is people are able to kind of stomach that a little bit more. It doesn't feel so overwhelming.
And I would say, start today and do a little bit more every day.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, just the key is the consistency. And I think that's important. All right, Jamie, anything in closing?
No, I thought this was great, and hopefully everybody got something out of it.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I've gotten really good feedback from some past ones that we've done, specifically the ones about all the virtual tools to use.
Great.
All right, this was great. This was great. Well, I know you're doing great things with helping companies, actually create these. So keep doing great things. And thanks for joining me today on Think Virtual.
Thanks, John. See you in a couple weeks.
Thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate everybody's time.